I watched as Mark's face lit up with triumph when I signed away my claim to the lottery ticket. His lawyer barely contained his smirk as he slid the paperwork across the conference table. "See, that wasn't so hard," Mark said, pocketing the ticket worth $10 million. "You should have just agreed weeks ago instead of dragging this out. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I just let my soon-to-be ex-husband think he'd outmaneuvered me." The lottery ticket he was so smugly claiming had been purchased 3 days before he asked for a divorce. A coincidence that had seemed too perfect at the time. "Are we done here?" I asked, keeping my voice steady as I gathered my things. My lawyer, Jennifer Chen, shot me a concerned look. "We discussed fighting for half the ticket. It was purchased during our marriage after all." But I'd insisted on letting it go. "Just a few more signatures," Jennifer said, laying out the final divorce papers. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Sarah?" Mark rolled his eyes. "She's sure. Right, honey? Time to move on." I signed where indicated, remembering the moment 2 weeks ago when everything had clicked into place. I'd been going through our old files, preparing for the divorce, when I found something that changed everything. "Congratulations," Mark's lawyer said as we finished. "You're officially divorced." Mark didn't even look at me as he stood up, already pulling out his phone. Probably texting his girlfriend, Amy, the 20-something receptionist he'd been seeing behind my back for the past year. "Mr. Mitchell," Jennifer called after him. "Remember, you have 48 hours to claim that ticket before it expires." He waved dismissively. "Don't worry, I'm heading to the lottery office right now. Can't wait to start my new life." As the door closed behind him, Jennifer turned to me. "Sarah, I have to ask, why did you give up your claim to the ticket? We could have fought for half." I smiled, pulling a folder from my briefcase. "Because sometimes winning isn't about getting half of something." I opened the folder and laid out several documents, bank statements, computer printouts, and a series of emails I'd discovered during my filing excavation. "What's all this?" Jennifer asked, leaning forward. "Proof that Mark didn't buy that ticket," I said quietly, "and proof of where the winning numbers really came from. 2 weeks ago, I found an old notebook of mine while cleaning out the home office. In it were lists of numbers, birth dates, anniversaries, ages that I'd been using to play the lottery every week for the past 5 years. Mark had always mocked my system, calling it a waste of money, but I'd kept playing the same numbers, week after week, using our online bank account's automatic payment system. The winning numbers? They matched my latest set exactly. The same numbers I played the week before Mark claimed to have bought his lucky ticket. "Are you saying?" Jennifer's eyes widened as she looked through the documents. "The money for that ticket came from our joint account," I explained. "The same account I've been using to play my numbers for years. Mark saw that I'd won, canceled my automatic payment, and bought a duplicate ticket with my numbers." "But why didn't you fight for it then?" "We could have proven." "Because of this," I said, pulling out one final document, a report from the Lottery Commission about duplicate tickets. Jennifer read it quickly, her eyes growing wider. "Oh my God." "Exactly," I said, gathering the papers back into my folder. "Mark's about to learn a very expensive lesson about karma." As we left the law office, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Hope you enjoy your life of mediocrity while I live it up." I didn't reply. Instead, I checked my watch, 3:45 p.m. The lottery office closed at 5. "How long do you think it'll take him to realize?" Jennifer asked as we walked to her car. "That depends on how thoroughly they check for duplicate tickets," I replied, "but I'd say within the hour." What Mark didn't know, what I discovered in my research, was that when duplicate tickets win the same drawing, the prize is split between them, and if only one ticket holder claims the prize before the deadline. Well, that's where things would get interesting. I settled into Jennifer's passenger seat, thinking about the other lottery ticket, the original one, purchased automatically through my bank account, safely stored in a safe deposit box across town. Mark thought he'd won by stealing my numbers and claiming the duplicate ticket, but in less than 48 hours, he'd learned that his victory was about to cost him everything. "Where to?" Jennifer asked, starting the car. "The bank," I replied. "I have something to pick up." As we drove, I thought about the past year, discovering Mark's affair, watching him grow more distant, feeling him pull away from our 15-year marriage. The lottery win should have been a blessing, a chance for us to start fresh. Instead, he'd seen it as his ticket to a new life without me. He'd even bragged about it during our separation, telling friends how lucky he was to have bought that ticket just before leaving his boring wife. My phone buzzed again, another text from Mark. Just arrived at the lottery office. Can't wait to collect my millions. I smiled, picturing his face when they ran the ticket through their system, when they found the duplicate, when they asked him detailed questions about when and where he'd bought it. Should we wait? Jennifer asked as we neared the bank. No need, I replied. The show's about to start without us. Right on cue, my phone started ringing, Mark's number flashing on the screen. I declined the call, watching as 3 more came in rapid succession. The bank appeared ahead of us, its marble columns gleaming in the afternoon sun. Inside my safe deposit box lay not just the original winning ticket, but also printed records of every lottery purchase I'd made over the past 5 years. Mark had thought he was so clever, swooping in to steal my win. He never stopped to consider that I might be cleverer. That was always his problem, underestimating me. I was about to show him just how expensive that mistake would be. By the time I pulled the original lottery ticket from my safe deposit box, my phone had exploded with messages from Mark, each one more desperate than the last. Call me now. This isn't funny, Sarah. You knew about this, didn't you? Answer your fate own e. I turned to Jennifer, who was reading the text over my shoulder. Should we head over to the lottery office? She grinned. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The scene at the lottery office was exactly what I'd expected. Mark was at the counter, his face red as he argued with the patient clerk. His lawyer stood nearby, frantically flipping through papers. There has to be a mistake, Mark was saying as we walked in. I bought this ticket. It's mine. Sir, the clerk repeated. Our system shows this is a duplicate ticket. We cannot process the claim until we verify the original purchase and determine if there are multiple claimants. Mark spun around at the sound of our footsteps, his eyes narrowing when he saw me. You, he snarled. You know about this. About what? I asked innocently, stepping up to the counter. Oh, are you trying to claim the prize from last week's drawing? What a coincidence. So am I. I placed my ticket on the counter, along with a folder containing my bank statements, automatic payment records, and 5 years' worth of lottery purchase history. The clerk's eyes widened as she reviewed the documents. Ms. Mitchell, would you please come with me? Our director needs to verify this information. Mark tried to follow, but security stepped between us. This is ridiculous, he shouted. She's trying to steal my winnings. Actually, Jennifer spoke up, her voice carrying across the now silent office. It appears you're the one who attempted theft, Mr. Mitchell. Buying a duplicate ticket with numbers you knew had won. That could be considered fraud. The color drained from Mark's face. His lawyer grabbed his arm, pulling him aside for a hurried whisper. In the director's office, I calmly explained everything. How I'd been playing the same numbers for years, how the winning ticket had been purchased through my automatic payment system, and how Mark had bought a duplicate after seeing my numbers had won. This is quite extraordinary, the director said, examining my documentation. In cases of duplicate tickets, the prize is typically split between verified purchasers. However, if one ticket is proven to be purchased fraudulently, I nodded. I have evidence that Mark accessed my bank account to view my lottery purchases before buying his ticket. He also canceled my automatic payment system the same day he bought his duplicate. The director made some notes, then picked up his phone. We'll need to involve our legal department and possibly law enforcement. When I emerged from my office an hour later, Mark was still there, pacing anxiously. His lawyer looked grim. Sarah, please, Mark said, his voice cracking. We can work this out. Split it 50-50, like we should have done in the divorce. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who had cheated on me, belittled me, and tried to steal my lottery win. The man who thought he could take everything and walk away unscathed. No, Mark, I said quietly. We can't work this out. You made your choice when you decided to steal from me instead of being honest. Steal? It was our joint account, which you accessed after moving out, after filing for divorce, specifically to view my lottery purchases, Jennifer interjected. The bank records show exactly when you logged in and what you viewed. His lawyer stepped forward. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss. I cut him off. The Lottery Commission has my evidence. They'll make their decision about the ticket and about whether to pursue fraud charges. Mark's face went from red to pale. Fraud charges. Buying a duplicate ticket with knowledge that the numbers had won. Jennifer smiled coldly. That's textbook fraud, Mr. Mitchell. He slumped into a chair, the reality of his situation finally hitting him. Not only would he not get the $10 million he thought he'd secured, but he might face criminal charges. Why? He whispered. Why didn't he just tell me about the ticket during the divorce? I thought about all the lies, all the betrayal, all the times he'd made me feel small and worthless. Because you needed to learn that actions have consequences, I replied, and that I'm not as stupid as you thought I was. As we left the lottery office, Mark's desperate pleas echoing behind us, I felt lighter than I had in years. The lottery commission would take a few days to make their official decision, but the outcome was clear. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Mark. I'm sorry, please don't do this to me. I deleted it without responding. He'd spent years doing things to me, never once considering how I felt. Now it was his turn to experience the consequences of his actions, and I wouldn't have to split my winnings with anyone. 3 months later, I sat across from the lottery commission's director, signing the final paperwork to claim my $10 million prize. The investigation had been thorough, but the conclusion was inevitable. The original ticket was mine, and Mark's duplicate was obtained fraudulently. Congratulations, Ms. Mitchell, the director said, sliding a ceremonial check across the desk. After taxes and withholdings, you'll receive approximately $6.4 million. The funds will be transferred to your account within 48 hours. I smiled, thinking about how differently things had turned out from what Mark had planned. He was currently facing criminal charges for lottery fraud, his lawyer having failed to negotiate the charges away. Have you decided what you're going to do with the money? Jennifer asked as we left the office. Actually, yes, I replied. I've already set everything in motion. The first thing I'd done was establish a charitable foundation focused on helping women escape financially abusive relationships. $3 million would go toward providing resources, legal aid, and support services. Another $1 million would fund scholarships for women returning to school after divorce. Something I wish I'd had when Mark first started showing his true colors years ago. The rest, that would ensure my own financial security while I pursued the dreams Mark had always dismissed as impractical. My phone buzzed. A text message, but not from Mark. He'd been barred from contacting me as part of his bail conditions. This was from Amy, his former girlfriend. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. I had no idea he was like that. I almost laughed at the irony. Amy had left Mark shortly after the lottery incident, finally seeing him for who he really was. Last I heard, she was dating someone her own age and finishing her degree. Life has a way of teaching us what we need to learn, I texted back. Later that evening, I walked through my new apartment, a modest but comfortable space overlooking the city park. No marble countertops or crystal chandeliers like Mark had always insisted on, just simple, elegant furnishings that made me feel at home. My writing desk sat by the window, where I'd been working on my first novel. Another dream Mark had mocked, calling it a waste of time. The advance copy from the publisher lay on the desk. Turns out, I had quite a story to tell. The doorbell rang, right on time. Sarah, my sister, stood there with a bottle of champagne. Ready to celebrate, she asked, pulling me into a hug. We settled on the balcony, watching the sun set over the city. The same city where, just months ago, I felt trapped in a marriage that was slowly suffocating me. Have you heard from him? Sarah asked carefully. His lawyer tried to negotiate a settlement, I replied. Offered to plead guilty to lesser charges if I'd agree to split the money. And? I smiled, sipping my champagne. I told them I'd rather see justice served. My phone buzzed again. An email from the foundation. The first round of grants had been approved, helping 10 women start new lives free from financial abuse. You know what's funny? I said to Sarah. Mark always said I was terrible with money, that I was wasting it playing the lottery. But those numbers, Mom's birthday, Dad's age when he died, our old house number, they weren't just random choices. They were reminders of where I came from, of who I was before him. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. And look at you now. Indeed, look at me now. The next morning, I had a meeting with my financial advisor. Another thing Mark had always insisted on handling himself. We discussed investment strategies, retirement planning, and future charitable giving. You're in an excellent position, she said, reviewing my portfolio. The foundation is structured perfectly for tax efficiency, and your personal investments are well diversified. As I left her office, I passed a newsstand. The local paper's headline caught my eye. Local man pleads guilty in lottery fraud case. I didn't need to read it. I knew Mark had finally accepted a plea deal, 18 months in prison, full restitution of legal costs, and a felony fraud conviction that would forever impact his ability to work in finance. His perfect image was shattered, his schemes exposed, his future forever altered by his own greed and arrogance. But I wasn't celebrating his downfall. Instead, I was celebrating my rise, not just financially, but personally. The money was significant, yes, but it wasn't what made me rich. What made me rich was finding my voice, reclaiming my power, and using both to help others do the same. That evening, as I worked on my novel, I got one final email from a lottery commission. They were featuring my story in their fraud prevention materials, using it to warn others about the consequences of ticket fraud. I smiled, thinking about how Mark had always underestimated me. He'd seen me as simple, naive, someone he could control and manipulate. But in the end, those same numbers I played faithfully for years, the ones he'd mocked and then tried to steal, had revealed his true character to the world. And I hadn't just won the lottery. I'd won my freedom, my dignity, and the chance to make a difference in others' lives. That was worth more than any amount of money. As I closed my laptop and looked out over the city lights, I felt at peace. The woman Mark had tried to diminish was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more powerful. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about getting better. And I had gotten so much better.